Let's just jump right in. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating distinction that honestly gets blurred all the time in our modern world. We're going to separate the brilliant, absolutely undeniable tool of science from a sneaky philosophical trap known as scientism. It sounds like a subtle shift in thinking, but as we'll see, it literally has massive implications for how we view reality, morality, and basically what it means to be human in this explainer. Now, thanks to the sheer success of modern medicine, physics, and engineering, science has this unparalleled predictive power. It's amazing, but it forces us to ask a pretty heavy question. Can science answer every single question? Like, is it truly the only path to real knowledge? Or is there stuff out there completely outside its reach? That tension right there, that's the main battleground between science and scientism. So let's look at this core conflict. On one side, you've got science, a truly spectacular method for describing nature, testing hypotheses, and gathering empirical data. It is phenomenal at what it does. But then on the other side, you have scientism. And here's the kicker. Scientism isn't a scientific method at all. It's actually a sweeping philosophical worldview. It's the belief that anything non-scientific, like ethics, aesthetics, or metaphysics, is just mere opinion, an illusion, or just total nonsense. Essentially, it claims science is the absolute only valid form of knowledge. To untangle all of this today, we're going to use a strict four-pillar framework. We'll cover point 1, the logical trap, 2, the reality gap, 3, unexplained nature, and 4, the success fallacy. And then we'll wrap up by looking at a truer picture of reality. All right, let's dive into point 1, the logical trap. This is where scientism kind of trips over its own shoelaces right out of the gate. Think about it. Step 1, the advocate claims that the scientific method is the only rational form of inquiry. But then look at step 2. You literally cannot prove that claim using a microscope or a chemistry experiment, right? The claim itself is a philosophical statement. You're actively doing philosophy to say that only science works. So step 3, scientism actually relies on the exact same philosophy it's trying to invalidate. It's logically circular, it's entirely self-refuting. And it gets even trickier. As noted in the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy, there's this thing called the demarcation problem. Basically, this is the unresolved challenge of strictly defining what is real science and separating it from non-science. The catch here? Any attempt to strictly define that boundary relies entirely on philosophical standards. So once again, science depends on philosophical assumptions just to define itself and interpret its own results. The falsity of strict scientism is pretty much doubly assured here. Okay, moving on to point 2, the reality gap. This pillar explores how the scientific method deliberately limits itself to certain types of descriptions, and importantly, what gets left out in that process. You see, science is designed to give us an is. We're talking quantitative data and hard facts, but our human experience? That is largely an ought, qualitative experiences, human values. As scholar Brian D. Arap points out in his critique of Sam Harris, science can give us incredible data about exactly how pain is processed in our brain's neurons, but it literally cannot bridge that is/ought gap to determine secular moral values. Lab data just can't tell you why causing pain is morally wrong. It only tells you that it's physically happening. Let's put that into a practical example. To make complex equations work, science often has to just leave out qualitative features. Think of an airplane engineer designing a plane. They reduce the passengers to simple mass and weight to calculate lift. And hey, that is a highly successful method for building planes. But concluding that humans have absolutely no other features besides weight, just because it doesn't fit the engineering equation, well, that's absurd. Treating human consciousness or morality as an illusion just because they don't neatly fit into a physics equation is a lot like sweeping dirt under a rug and just pretending the dirt doesn't exist. This reality gap becomes really glaring when authors like Sam Harris try to hijack the prestige of science to claim it objectively proves moral truths. Harris argues that science determines morality because morality is about maximizing well-being. But wait a second. The idea that maximizing well-being is good is literally the classic philosophical premise of utilitarianism. It's not a scientific fact. When Harris says science proves the Taliban's oppression of women is wrong, he's actually mistaken about his own method. We know the Taliban is wrong through common sense and moral philosophy, not because someone ran a lab experiment on them. There's a great quote from philosopher Bertrand Russell that really hammers this point home. He said that physics gives us the abstract equations of change, but it is totally silent on the inner reality of what is changing. Physicist Erwin Schrödinger observes something super similar. Our incredibly sophisticated scientific pictures of the world are constructs of our minds, and yet the mind itself remains a total stranger to those purely physical equations. Science is completely silent on the qualitative reality of the observer. Which brings us to point 3, unexplained nature. Here, we confront a massive explanation deficit right at the bedrock of science itself. See, science relies completely on the laws of nature to explain the universe. But because science actually presupposes these laws in order to function, it logically cannot explain where those laws come from in the first place. Even when physicists hypothesize a universe from nothing, they're still talking about energy, space, and natural laws. Science just cannot explain why there is a law of nature, or how it even has the power to dictate how the universe behaves. If we look at how different philosophical worldviews try to answer this, where do laws of nature come from, we start to see a major problem for scientism. Aristotelians might say laws describe how substances operate based on their essence. Early modern thinkers, folks like Newton and Descartes, said laws exist in the mind of God. Platonists point to abstract forms. Now, you don't have to agree with any of these to see the bigger picture. All of these require metaphysical or theological explanations to ground the laws of nature. Strict scientism refuses to accept metaphysics at all, meaning it has zero explanation for the very laws it uses to do its daily work. It's kind of like driving a car and absolutely refusing to believe in the factory that built it. And finally, point 4, the success fallacy. Imagine someone holding a metal detector on a beach. It is completely unparalleled at finding metallic objects, right? But if they sweep the sand and confidently conclude, hey, my metal detector is successful, therefore only metal exists in the world, and things like plastic, wood, and water are just illusions, we would call them crazy. But honestly, this is exactly what scientism does. Assuming only physical reality exists just because science is incredibly good at finding physical facts is the exact same logical fallacy. People who advocate for scientism often demand to know what is the predictive, technological success of philosophy or theology. But as the sources point out, demanding the predictive success of philosophy is basically like demanding a list of the metal-detecting successes of a paintbrush or the culinary successes of a shovel. Just because a method is spectacularly successful for its own very specific purpose doesn't mean there are no other purposes worth pursuing. There are profound truths found in logic, mathematics, and metaphysics that our scientific metal detector was just never designed to find. So that leads us to our conclusion, a truer picture of reality. What should you really take away from all this? Well, as James K.A. Smith highlights in the Notre Dame Philosophical Reviews, science is not just some pristine, transparent magnifying glass held up to nature. It is fundamentally a human cultural performance. It involved actual humans interpreting data through a specific philosophical lens. And because of that, fields like philosophy, history, and theology do not need to bow to it as if science is the sole, unquestionable voice of reality. They are all totally valid, essential tools in the human toolkit for understanding our world. I'll leave you with this final thought. Science is an incredible, absolutely essential tool for understanding the physical facts of our world, and we should celebrate it. But when we mistake that tool for the entire truth, when we use only a metal detector to explore a vast, colorful landscape, what richness of human experience are we missing when we refuse to use the others? We risk sweeping the profound depths of human meaning right under the rug. Keep exploring, and make sure you're using all the tools at your disposal.